Yo, what is going on, guys? It is non-reality, and in today's video, I wanted to make a guide on drop rate. Now, I've been wanting to make this guide for the newer players that are joining the game because I've heard a lot of questions about how to actually get a really good trash per hour, and then get the silver per hour that other people have been getting. And the main thing is how to stack drop rate correctly. There's a lot of ways to actually get drop rate in the game. Um, that you may not know right away if you're just playing the game. Maybe you'll just use your loot scrolls, or maybe you don't even know about loot scrolls or how they work. But if you're at the point where you're now like farming Kratuga or Centaurs, or even later in the game, maybe there's some things that you don't know about, I will quickly run you through them. So the first thing we want to talk about is drop amount. Now, there's two things in this game. We have drop amount and drop rate. Drop amount is the amount of trash loot you're going to get off of a percentage. And the main way to do that is through Agris and through level 2 loot scrolls. You probably heard before blue and yellow. Back in the day, they used to do blue would be level 1s, which would be drop rate 100% and drop amount 50%, and then level 2 or a yellow would be drop rate 100% and drop amount 100%. So how do we get these drop amounts to the maximum we can get them? So the first thing obviously is a level 2 loot scroll. That's pretty simple. You get these loot scrolls over here in your pearl inventory called item collection increase scrolls. When you use them, it will add time to this menu right here, and then you can click level 2 while farming to get the 100% drop amount. Now, I don't recommend this for most spots if you are a newer player and you don't have a ton of loot scrolls. Right now I have 280, which is enough for me safely to grind with level 2 in almost every spot I do and not run out of loot scrolls. But if you're a newer player and you only have 50, 80, or 100 of these and you're going to be grinding a ton, maybe don't use level 2 and just take the little bit of hit in the silver. Some spots it's not even much of a hit at all, but you want to make sure you always have at least a level 1 running whenever you are doing anything with loot scrolls. Now, the second way to get the item drop amount to the highest you can is with the Agris Fever. Now, the Agris Fever is basically just a buff you put on yourself by right clicking it, and it will be active, and it will basically use up your points depending on which mobs you're killing, and it will give you a 150% drop amount. Now, if you're a newer player, yours might not be 150%, and you might also not have 100,000 cap. I will show you how to do that in a second. One thing I want to quickly say is there is a document or a Google Doc that I will post in the description that shows you the Agris Fever points you use for every single spot in the game. That way you can get an understanding of when to actually use it. And then also if you go to Garmoth, you can sort by like Agris Fever and not Agris Fever, and it will tell you which spots are actually good to actually use Agris Fever at. Because some spots, you can use 10k an hour, but then there's some spots where you can use 40k an hour. If you're constantly using your 20k per day after doing the book, you kind of want to, pick a spot where you're using 10, 15, or 20k an hour. You don't want to pick a spot where you're going to be using 40k an hour because you'll just make less silver off of that. But how do we get to 100k cap with 150 drop amount? So if we go over here to the adventure logs, which I will try to be making a guide on soon. This one's a lot of work because there are a ton of books. And we go over here to the book of Margana or Margahan. I think it's in this collection right here in the Old Moon Logs collection. You will need to complete Book of Margahan 1 and Volume 2, and then there's no Volume 3. And this will basically give you, upon completions, 5,000 points, 5,000 points, just a bunch of points. There's the drop amount for the extra 50%, and then we have Book 2, which gives you more, and then it gives you recover points, so you get 20k per day, which is really nice. And then that will basically cap you out at 100k total cap with the 20k per day and the 150%. Now that we got all of that out of the way, that's basically all that it is for drop amount. Let's just go over that real quick one more time. Drop amount, and you have your Agris Fever at only certain spots that it is worth using. And then you have your level 2 loot scroll, which will give you an extra 50% based, instead of the level 1, it will give you 100%, which is just really nice to have if you're farming a spot with high trash like Centaurs. Now let's get into drop rate. Now drop rate is the thing that we're going to be using to try to get, more Kaffir stones, try to get those rarer items you're farming for pity piece. Maybe you want a higher drop rate. Although I do have my my little theories on how drop rate works. Nothing's completely been proven yet. So just basically try to go for the highest drop rate you possibly can when you're farming for a certain item, or you're farming at a spot where drop rate is more important than drop amount, such as like something like Underground Gyfin, which I know is like a more end game spot, but there you'd want to stack as much drop rate as possible so you can get as many accessories as possible in an hour. So let's talk about how to do that. So first of all, Level 1 and level 2 have the same drop rate. So if you are not farming at a spot where you do not need this 100% drop amount, you're going to be using level 1. This will save you on scrolls, and you'll thank me later when you don't run out of scrolls later on. Super nice. Now, the other way to get a little bit of percent is through your campsite. If you haven't bought a camp, I'd recommend buying it with the early new adventure coupons and everything you get. If you don't have any coupons, you can wait a little bit. But when you go to this camp and you go to shop, you can buy the Adventure Luck 5. I only recommend buying the Adventure Luck 5 for 50 mil. Never buy any of these other ones, only level 5. It is always worth it to buy level 5. And you will always make your silver back. It's only 50 mil. Most spots you're going to be grinding are going to be grinding, 600 to 800 mil. Even as a newer player at Kartuga, you can make 600 mil an hour or 500 mil an hour, and you'll be making this back, and you'll have a better chance at getting even more silver per hour. So make sure you're using that whenever you're grinding if you do have access to the tent. Now, there are a few other ways. Those are the main ways. So with this, and with this, you're at 150%. And then you have some base percent just off of like ecology and whatnot. So right now my base percent is 48%. Based off of like a bunch of stuff comes into it, like family fame and ecology. They're not really going to get hugely into that, but if you click the H menu, there's an item drop rate amount. So mine's 16% because I have 4,000 ecology points. Ecology is basically like this whole thing where you basically have to talk to it. It's basically like knowledge in a way. Whenever you talk to a new NPC and it says you unlock the knowledge, it's basically that in a way. I'm not going to get too much into that because it's really in depth. You're going to need to do ecology for a book, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. But if you need to figure out ecology, I'd recommend watching in the ecology guide to get that percentage up. But yeah, that's why my base percent is 48. So if I use the 100% from the loot scrolls and the 50% from the tent, I would then be at 198.5%, which is really good, but you can get it even higher. How do we get it even higher? Now, I will say anything from this point forward, for the most part, won't be towards newer players, except for one thing I'm going to mention, which is events. So a lot of the times in this top left corner up here, you'll see a drop rate. So similar to how we have an XP event going on right now, next to it will be a drop rate event. Every once in a while, they'll give us, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, all the way up to 100% drop rate increase, which will go on for a week or two. They do this pretty commonly. I think there was literally just one last week. There's usually one like once every other week or something like that. And those are the times you really want to go hard with grinding, because that's when you can get your drop rate up a ton. For normal servers, and if you're just a regular player, your max drop rate will be 300% at a cap. So like, I know a lot of newer players, they have a ton of scrolls. I don't have any on me, but let's just assume this was like a drop rate scroll. You'd pop this 100% scroll, you'd use this to 100%, now you have 200%, and then you pop this camp buff, now you have 250%, and then drop rate event, now you have 300%. That's how you'd be like stacking your drop rates. Make sure you're using any drop rate scrolls you have. Make sure you're using them sparingly, and make sure you only use them when you actually are going to grind for an hour. When I was early on in this game, I'd grind for like 30 to 40 minutes, or I'd like pop my buffs without checking if the rotation's taken, and I'd waste a ton of time on my drop rates. And those are pretty, coveted or hard to get if you don't spend money to actually get the drop rates, because they only happen so often in events, for free at least. So now that I got all that out of the way, that's like all the new player stuff. There are two more ways to get drop rate. One of them is a little bit newer player friendly, and one of them is not new player friendly at all. So the first way that you can get even more drop rate is on Arsha. Now, Arsha is a full PvP server. If anyone sees you, they can kill you no matter what. But the perks to that is you get a 50% drop rate bonus, and also your cap for drop rate goes up to then 350%. For most players, 350%. So whenever let's say I swap to Arsha right now, I'll show you at the top left, it will show the drop rate. So I'd recommend doing this if you're grinding a nicher spot. Like sometimes when I go to Histria and I'm trying to farm the compass, I'll go over to Arsha, because there isn't too many people on Arsha on Histria that are actually farming there. So you can get a few hours in where you actually won't get fought by anyone at all. And you can get that little extra 50% drop rate, which is super nice. So we're just loading in here real quick. And you can see at the top, it says now I have Arsha item drop rate 50%. So now that adds on, now I'm at 98%. And then I pop those buffs and I'm even more up, and that is amazing. And then you stack that with even more events, and you can get all the way up to that 350% cap that I talked about. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, although this will not apply to 90% of players, 99% of players, it doesn't apply to me either. But if you are in a higher end of Node War guild, you can fight for territories and like this one over here, I think is taken right now. So this one is owned by Barcode. If you farm in the Calpheon territory, right there, it says occupation benefits. Republic of Calpheon and Camisylvia item drop rate plus 50% when defeating a monster. So if you are in Barcode and Barcode owns a territory, they get a plus 50% if they farm in Calpheon and Camisylvia, which then makes it so they can get all the way up to 400% drop rate. Now, that does seem a little bit unfair, but they honestly deserve it for going through the node war and winning the territory, so they get that little bit of extra 50%. But for most players, just worry about the things I talked about earlier. Make sure you're using your loot scrolls effectively and not wasting them. Make sure you're making sure there's any events going on, and make sure you're popping your drop rate buffs that you might have at a good time. But yeah, I hope this video helped maybe explain drop rate a bit better. I know it can be a bit confusing on how to stack drop rate correctly as a newer player. But yeah, if you did like this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.